Hello everybody and welcome to the Phonostage audio video channel. This is the next instalment of me talking about hi-fi and life, the universe and all those kind of things. Today I'm going to talk about and do my review, okay, of the quite amazing Moor Amps Angel 4 and Angel Pre. I'm going to talk to you about Moor Amps generally, including the Super Juggernaut Angel 6, and there's one of those going to be here next week, so then I'll talk to you again, you know, but let's start with the Angel 4. Now, the followers amongst you will have noticed that I've not posted a video in absolutely ages. It's actually been, time runs away, you see, time runs away with you. It's actually been well over a year. You know, possibly approaching 2 years, even though it really doesn't feel like it. So I sort of laid off the videos and a few other things for a little while because we had a little baby who's now a little boy, tearing about the place, prodding things that he shouldn't be prodding, you know, twiddling things he shouldn't be twiddling. So I've taken certain protective measures, you know, I've had some locks restored on these old doors here, you know, so that I can actually lock the bloody room up, you know, if I need to. Got some protective covers for my speakers. This is another thing I'm going to talk to you about, how to protect your hi-fi from children. Look at these bad boys. So these are amplifier cover manufacturer that I use because I play guitar, you know, the cover, you know, so you protect your amps in transit. Got them to make me some speaker bags. Okay? Now if he wants to run into them with his alphabet trolley or something, that's absolutely fine. So yeah, so I kept thinking, well, while he's a little baby, you know, I'm too busy and I'll just leave it for a bit. I thought I'll have more time after he's a few months old or a couple of months old, and then he kept me busy doing something else, and then, you know, keeps us all chaotically busy doing something else. And I've really sort of thought I really have to be cracking on with this. It's getting a bit embarrassing. So I'm back. Right, there you go. So I've spent quite a lot of time listening. You know, when everybody's gone to bed, that's my time to get all hi-fi about everything. But one of the big changes really is that I've got really into these kind of Moor amps, and now Phonostage deals with Moor amps. I'm very proud to do so. I've met the people who make them, Tim Narramore and his wife Ruth, and they're wonderful people. And these look to be some kind of work of obsession. And when you listen to Tim talking, you kind of do get that feeling. They're extraordinarily well built. I don't know if over-engineered, because I think I've kind of learned that with hi-fi, up to a point at least, the amount of time and effort and attention that you give to how you engineer something, the quality of the components, even the case and things like that, all do make a difference. And it all adds up to something. You know, these are not cheap amplifiers, but the results are outstanding. Don't forget, by the way, this is a channel. There are more videos. It'd be very helpful to us if you subscribe to this channel and like it and share it. I have had a lot more followers while I've been passively doing nothing, so I feel a bit guilty and I feel obliged to kind of get something down for those people. So as I've been listening to this and it's kind of running more and more, little words have popped into my head. And I've thought, I need to just put that word in the notes on my phone. That's what I do, you know, my little notes thing, and just put a word. And so I'm not led by hi-fi reviewer words. I don't think, oh, you know, I'd like to say something about this, or I'd like to say something about that, knowing, you know, in advance what word it is I'm trying to describe or what concept I'm trying to describe. I sit and listen to it. I play my old favourite things, and words pop into my head, and then I write those words down. So I'm going to start by resonant, right? This is a word that occurred to me. So resonant, what do I mean by that? Well, try and imagine an analog synth. If you've ever played with an analog synth and you play with those kind of the filter sweeps, you know, and you kind of get this kind of fizzy, you know, like sawtoothy kind or fizzy type quality. And, you know, as it's sort of like, as you sweep up, you can sort of feel it. It's a very, you know, they're analog synths and it's a very analog sound. You know, the very, it is a sound that its resonance and its kind of fizziness and its liveness, right, is easily dulled by a piece of hi-fi equipment or by the process of getting something from that synthesizer in that studio in 1981 or whatever it is to your house in the future. something somewhere is lost in translation, and it's still very clearly a resonant sweep, you know, and it appears in so many different things. I mean, you know, I've got Flaming Lips to mind, I've got Grandaddy to mind, I've got early sort of Depeche Mode, Gary Newman, all kinds of different things to mind, Ultravox. You know, if you've got a really good amplifier and, you know, good speakers to go with it, it does transport you back. You can imagine that recording. You can feel that resonance. You know, it's not, if it's been translated well enough to the media, to the recording, so, you know, good streaming, poor streaming, or, you know, average streaming doesn't convey that very well. But if you can get it to your house, yeah, in good condition, that sound, then having an amplifier like this will absolutely help you to extract it, and you will keep the resonance. Now that is very, very important to me, because that doesn't just translate to kind of synth sweeps. That's the most obvious example. You can imagine the resiny, scratchy, you know, sound of a bow, you know, on a string. It's hard to convey that, you know, through a hi-fi system, but if you've ever done it in real life, you can feel it. You know, you can feel it pull, you can feel the scratch of it. I used to play the cello at school. I did, oh God, I spent a long time trying to convince my mother that I wanted to give that up and play the guitar. So a few more words. Okay, engaging, right. Okay, so engaging is when you're having a critical listen to something. Okay, so I might be listening for particular things, or I might be thinking, oh, I'll just listen to something because whatever the reason is, you know, it isn't sort of like, you know, disco party, I'm having a good time, we've had a few drinks, let's get some music on. You know, because that's when you really get into your music the most, you know, in one sense. That's when you get into the groove of the music, you know. But when something's engaging, then even if you're listening to something in an analytical way or a critical way, or I'm trying to evaluate it in some way, I end up getting into it, right? I end up feeling the groove, it's engaging, and it kind of pulls me into it, you know, and I'm sort of like getting all musical about it. Yeah. So that is something that it has a knack of doing. It's not a passive listening experience, you know. So, and even things can be hypercritical and still relatively passive to listen to. Okay, so I'll think about a good example of that in the future. I'll talk to you about that. Transparent. So I wrote transparent on a stick, right? Transparent on a stick, hearing all sorts. So this is the sort of quality that makes me want to play my old records over it again. I want to go back to Squawk by Budgie, which I can just see peeking out there over there on the record shelf. I'd love to show you my record collection one day. Al Stewart is another one. Caravan I've been listening to. I've got like a bit of a record hit list at the moment of some old favourites, including Dire Straits, Love Over Gold, because it's one of the first records that I really got into, right? I was only about 17. So, yeah, so this kind of like transparent quality. I can hear things, even though I've said it dozens of times before, I say, oh, I can hear things I've never heard before. Where does that actually end? Okay, because only recently, and I'm 55 now, I have to think about that. Only recently did I get these, and again, I'm hearing things that I've never really heard before. I may have heard them and they've been presented to me in such a way that they've not stood out enough to be noticeable. So that is great. That makes you want to play music. So we've got at least two things there, you know, the engaging and the transparent that make you want to, you know, come back to the room and play music. Everybody's gone to bed. I'm going to put a record on, you know. So that's really, really what hi-fi is about. Dynamic. Okay, so I've talked about dynamic before when I was talking about the exposure amplifier. So this is dynamic is the ability to convey the difference momentarily between the loud and the quiet. So when you get like a little ping or a little this or a little that, There are bigger, grander dynamics. There is the sweep of the music, you know, loud bits, quiet bits, you know. Well, spoke about Telegraph Road. That's a fantastic example of dynamics. That's a hard song to get right, you know, like a hard track to play for a piece of hi-fi equipment, because it goes from so quiet to so loud that if it's at all recessed in the mids, even just slightly, then Mark Knopfler's voice kind of becomes kind of fairly quiet in the sort of quieter parts, and you really sort of find yourself turning it up. Then the music comes back in, bang, and it's too loud, and you find yourself turning it down, and you're tracking this track on your volume, and it can get a little bit frustrating. So, you know, you want things to be dynamic, but dynamic in a way where, you know, it keeps everything on an even keel. You know, you're not fiddling about with your volume all the time, and it does it with the smallest little things, right? And as I said about the exposure is I would sit there and listen to, it was in the 3510 review, and I was talking about little noises, about it delivering them to you, okay? You know, that you don't have to sort of like go listening for them, trying to search for, it delivers, ping, it pulls you to one side a little bit, you know, or a minor chord is played, and it kind of, you know, it's sort of like, you can feel it in your face, right? You know, it delivers music to you. You know, and having good dynamics gives it the ability to do that. Okay, another weird things. This is direct from the phone, this, right? Lush, yet crispy at the same time. What on earth am I talking about? Really do not know. These words are ones where, what does that even mean? Yeah, prompt a few times to add words. Lush, yet crispy. Right, so what that means is that lushness, right? Now, other people will have their own view on this, and other reviewers will have their own. Lushness can be a good and a bad thing, right? So lushness can be at the expense of some of those other things that we were talking about, like dynamism or you know, the kind of the resonance, you know. So I've put lush yet crispy. So it's like, it's not lush as in lying in immersed up to your neck in Icelandic volcanic mud, you know, kind of, or lush experience, you know. It's not lush experience like a rich, fatty, you know, kind of, you know, slows you down experience. You know, it is lush. It gives you kind of a warmth, right, when you're listening to it. This is not a cold sounding amplifier by any stretch. Its precision does not come with coolness or coldness, right? So it's kind of lush, it's warm, it feels kind of quite relaxing to listen to, but still the dynamics, you know, it's got tremendous bass. I mean, it's really, really good at the bottom end. That's one of the first things I ever noticed when I heard the Angel 6 at a hi-fi show. It was the upper bass, right? Okay, it was the best I'd heard. I was hearing articulation of bass and things like bass guitars and stuff, the better than I'd ever really heard it. It was played loud at the show. So, and that was into a set of Graham Audio LS5 9Fs, which is what I'm using here with this Angel 4. So it's this lushness. It's able to do that and keep it cozy and keep it warm and keep it luxurious, yeah, but not at the expense of the crispiness, the dynamism and the resonance and things like that. So, so I thought that was a very important note to make. Let's just see. So, okay, got some music examples. Okay, a couple of music examples. So, let's start. I want to talk about Starsailor. Right, okay, I really like Starsailor. They're fairly local, actually. You know, I'm in Preston, and they're from sort of out Chorley way somewhere. I mean, you won't, if you're in Azerbaijan or United States or somewhere like that, you won't know where Chorley is, but it's, you know, there are a couple of notable people from Chorley, you know, kind of like the guy out Starsailor is one, John Fox was another, you know, there are people out there. So, shout out to Chorley. Now, so Starsailor. Now, the album that's off, you know, it's quite... That's a bit lushly recorded. You know, they were trying to be, you know... I wish I was there. I wish I could talk to the guy about it. You know, you could listen to something, you know, pretty dynamic and pretty modern sounding and really super clear, and then put that on it, it'd sound flat as a pancake. And you think, well, this was a successful album, you know, what's all that about? And so when you listen to it, there is detail in there. It was just recorded in a sort of like analogue-y type, perhaps contrived, you know, I think they went to some lengths possibly to make it sound as analog as possible. And it can sound quite kind of lush, but lush in a non-very, you know, it's hard to extract the dynamics out of it. The songs do still, though, convey themselves very well on any equipment. But when you get them on really good hi-fi equipment, that difference, you know, that kind of potential lo-finess, yeah, it really stands out more. The better your equipment get, the more obvious it becomes. So it can sound kind of flat in comparison. But I did listen to it, and as I said, you know, I was hearing things I've never heard before. So when I was listening to this, you know, it's like dismantles it almost. So it just went that extra few percent in its ability to kind of like get the detail out of music or to extract, you know, the emotion out of it, whatever. With that particular record, it's sort of like listening to it with the Moor Amps definitely took it over a sort of a tipping point. Yeah, I'd had a couple of glasses of wine, right, granted, but it took it over through a threshold, okay? And it was able to me, deconstruct that record back to its base components, you know, the keyboards, the vocals, different parts of the vocals, whatever it was, and the piano. And it was able to do that just well enough through that threshold so that you could pick out the emotion, the emotional content and the intent, the recorded, the studio experience, what they were playing, how they were feeling, how they wanted it to feel. So whatever happened in the production afterwards, okay, that may have shrouded that to some extent, was kind of like brushed to one side. It was able to dig deep enough to go back to the studio, and I felt like that it was the closest I got to the conveyed emotion of that music. So that album to me has took on a new light, and again, it's another one that I'm just listening to again and again and again, and I'm really enjoying it. So for enjoying it again, it's rediscovered. It's like an epiphany album for me. A couple of favourites, really. Yeah, I've written there as well. It conveys emotions and intent very well indeed. So American Head by Flaming Lips, right? Now, this is known to be a kind of prime example of the loudness wars, right? Now, there's only so much you can do about it. I don't know if you know about that. I'm not going to talk about them too much now, the loudness wars, because it's just like, you know, Google it. But I will talk about it in the future because this video is going on. Oh, my goodness me. So, American Head is a good example, right? When you look at it, so they've got this got an RME DAC here and the Ever Solo. So they've both got kind of, you know, graphic EQs, you know, that sort of thing on, and spectrum analyzers. And, you know, I'm used to sort of playing music and you see them going up and down and up and down. Da, 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 da. You know, when you put this on at times, you know, if I've muted it because, you know, somebody's on the phone or something like that, you know, so I muted it and I'm looking at the display and it's like that. You know, it's just going out, you know, it's so flipping pushed. But still, and you can't defeat that, it becomes more obvious on better equipment. Although I think, to be honest, like Muse, I think, unless you're listening to it in your car stereo or, you know, in a pub at full volume, I think your Muse is completely brilliant. I think they should remix all those. So, but good examples are Mother I've Taken LSD, snappy, and Brother I. There is emotion in those tracks, right? All the way through that album. That is a deep album. Yeah, it's recommended listening from me, okay? And yeah, sometimes it gets a bit loud and a bit shouty, but if you've got good gear and you've got a good ear, you can pull, you know, a lot of kind of emotional content out of that, you know. And I did find myself really enjoying listening to that on this setup. Another example. Well, there's a few. I've written a few down, but let's just sit with them for now. Okay. And another thing, just kind of an observation really, is about, I've said this about speakers before, right? But really about amplifiers. I've not really said it about amplifiers, but it it did occur to me. This is the thing about overlapping sounds. Have you ever really thought about that, overlapping sounds? Certain music, you know, I first noticed it as a kind of like a concept to me. I was listening to Coldplay on something once. There were some speakers that weren't run in. And I found that it sounded great, you know, like, you know, the quiet bit at the beginning, acoustic guitars and like a piano and all this. When the music kind of kicked in, you know, rocky, well, as rocky as Coldplay can get, to be honest. Oh, anyway, don't start me off. Right? It got confused, right? It sounded confused. It sounded kind of blurry. And it's kind of a bit hard to differentiate between one thing and another. And the more articulate a piece of equipment gets, the more run-in a pair of speakers get, or the higher up the tree, you know, an amplifier gets. The better it is at separating out these sounds, putting them in the stereo spectrum somewhere. You know, people talk about the height and the depth, and yeah, but you know, that's kind of subjective to a degree. What's not subjective is that they're mixed left to right. Okay, so finding them a place where they're intended to be, putting them back in that place. They're not just a music deconstruction machine, they're a music reconstruction machine. So you put them back in the place, okay? And but they overlap. And then the sounds overlap, don't they? So something crashes over here, and then something hits here, and then something does it on top of it. So they overlap. That's when it gets confusing. So your amplifier, your equipment has to be articulate enough, okay, to be able to separate out overlapping sounds. So you can still hear the beginning of one and the end of another, and the beginning of the one overlapping it, and the end of it, right? Multiple times over. And that prevents that kind of confusion that you find that you listen to when things get a little bit all garbled, you know, particularly at higher volumes. So, yeah, very good at kind of separating out overlapping sounds. Now, the Moor Amps, okay, is the Angel, the preamp. Talk a bit slightly about the technical elements. The preamp is it's a solid beast. Okay, it's a heavy chunk of a design. If you read the bump, you know about it. You know these amplifiers, they're kind of made of different thickness aluminium plates, kind of bolted together. It's got a very, very high quality Alps pot on it. It's a passive design, okay. Although it's got buffered output stages, so I think it still qualifies as a passive design. You can tell, you know, it's built to a very, very high quality. When the remote control, where is it? Let's have a look. This is a bit of a weapon, this thing. I mean, it's like, it weighs about half a pound, you know, in old money. It's made out of a solid chunk of aluminium. It's not over-engineered in the sense of like, well, it is over-engineered physically, but it's a pretty straightforward thing. There's nothing there that doesn't need to be there. It's just what's needed, done extremely well. It's all heavy, okay? I mean, the Angel 4 weighs about 16 kilos. The Angel 6 weighs nearly 30 kilos and is a difficult thing to lift. Over 60 pounds, a difficult thing to lift and manoeuvre about. You know, you have to be careful to avoid personal injury, you know. So they have rounded off heatsink, you know, the fins on the heatsink, so that you can pick them up without kind of cutting yourself. They're heavy things, you know, beautifully made. So the amplifier, the Angel 4, is the smaller one of the, you know, the pair that are in current production. It's 75 watts a channel into 8 ohms, 150 into 4 ohms. Not huge numbers, but it feels like current, you know, it feels like there's different kinds of power in the world. There's 75 watts per channel or 150 watts per channel on your Pioneer face-off flip front car stereo, right? You know, or whatever it is, your JVC MIDI system in the garage. Or there's like 75 of those watts, right? So those watts are different kind of watts. They're a qualitative, punchy, heavily delivered watt, right? You know you've got a watt. So 75 watts. And its strengths, really, the design, it's a very, very low feedback design. And from what we've learned about it, a lot of the effort has gone into the power supply and going to great lengths to isolate and purify the power and the current going into it on the premise, you know, good in, good out, you know, which is as simple as that really. But I don't understand the technical elements of it. I did ask, you know, have you got any kind of like sexy, you know, pictures with the top off? You know, I asked Tim about this. And he said, well, no, not really. He said, we don't go to great lengths to make it look absolutely amazing inside for the purposes of publicity. You know, wires all beautifully kind of running like, you know, like a little motorway to, you know, cross-talking each other because the two flipping close to each other. It's done entirely from a performance perspective. But I did get a couple of little sneaky clips, you know, sent to me, a couple of nice little photos, teasing photos, which I will drop into the video, you know, like at some point, maybe here and here. So, so yeah, it's a pretty good looking thing. So that's pretty much it for me. I'd like to invite you to ask me any questions in the comments. I'd like to invite you to subscribe to this channel if you haven't subscribed to it already. And as usual, I'm going to say like it and share it and spread the love and help support the channel. That would be really, really appreciated. If you have any thoughts about this or any of the equipment that I've spoken about already, you know, feel free to put those thoughts in the comments. And if you have any particular requests of anything that you'd like me to talk about or reflect on, or, you know, maybe not so much specific piece of equipment because I'm kind of a bit limited as to where I can get my paws on. But yeah, just have a think about that. And I think that's more or less it for me. I hope you enjoyed the video review. I'm going to stick with Moor Amps for a little while, as I say. Got the Angel 6 to do. Like and subscribe and do all that business. And look out for me for the next one. Thank you very much. Bye.